Hi again, everybody. Scott with you. I'm so excited to be joined today by one of my favorites. She is an author, humanitarian, singer, songwriter, actress, and cancer survivor. She's written and recorded some of the most instantly recognizable songs in Canadian music, like Spaceman, Moment of Weakness, and I Love Myself Today. She's also written about her life and her career in a new book, Ibificus, a memoir. There is only one Bif Naked, and she is with us here today on the record player. Thank you, Biff. How are you?
What an introduction. Well, I'm
Good.
fantastic after hearing that.
I build you up and then you got nowhere to go.
Amazing. It's really good to meet you and be here.
Well, thank you for joining us. How have you been during the past shut-in time, and what have you been doing with yourself this past year?
So last year, right before I guess everything went kind of into pandemic mode. So this is March of last year, exactly a year ago, we were doing an acoustic tour
Yep.
in Ontario. It was phenomenal. I was probably hugging 200 people a night, signing books after the show and meeting everyone, and that was it. Like every other musician and speaker, all of our gigs got postponed or canceled, or postponed and eventually canceled for the rest of the year. We did a couple streaming things, which was amazing. One of the highlights definitely was North Bay Pride. It was amazing to be able to still do that in a streaming kind of way. And we've done our own streaming show, which has been a lot of fun, learning how to do that and find our fun in it. But definitely, I miss playing live, but mostly I miss meeting people and doing the meet and greets.
Yeah, you go from hugging 200 people a night to being told to stay away from everybody, right? So
Yeah, and I think that we dodged a bullet in so many ways, because I just think, wow, all those people were, together, shoulder to shoulder at these shows, and I just think, I can't believe that, we all stayed safe. We were all very lucky, but I don't know when on earth we'll ever be able to do that again.
well, hopefully, fingers crossed. I think everybody's hoping, but I want to go back to the start. And when I say back, I mean way back. Your route to being a Canadian artist was a little twisty, to say the least. You were born in India, adopted by American missionaries, and then moved to Canada afterwards.
That's right. And
um,
I was the only Canadian in my family. Everyone else was American. And my birth mom was Canadian.
oh, okay.
So that's how that worked out. And it was really cool.
Um, is India or that part of the world or that culture, is that still a part of you? Is that something that you embraced, was the culture of it?
100%. And for a little white kid, that's really the only connection I had to any culture. I mean, it's just kind of always been with us. My older sister was adopted a year before me. She was the brown kid, I was the white kid. And then my younger sister was born when my parents got back to the US. So we've always had, kind of this little mixed family. And I don't know. I think that because it was the only cultural connection I had as an adopted person. Um, it's just something that's always been a part of my life. And as I got older and started really exploring theology and philosophies and stuff, it really resonated with me. All of the different religions and philosophies of India.
Have you been back? Have you been there?
I have, and it's of course for us kids that grow up in North America, we romanticized India so much, and I mean it's this incredible country. It's the largest middle class in the world. It was like that's always the saying that I always had in my head. But being there physically and having your feet on the ground is a totally different experience. I think everyone should go. Of course, to India. I always think that, but for me, it was life changing to be able to go there and be there in person. I'm surprised they actually returned to North America at that time, but I look forward to going back one day.
That's great. Um, you grew up in Winnipeg. You went to high school and university. Did you go to theater school? And and this is what I find funny, and I don't know if I don't think anybody should be surprised by this if they've ever seen interviews with you or seen you live, but you did stand-up comedy for a little while.
I wanted to.
You wanted to.
I wanted to. I did go into theater. I never was a musician. I took piano as a kid, but we also took ballet. So I wanted to be a choreographer until I was cast in a school play in the 5th grade, and then that was it. I wanted to be an actress. That was all I wanted to do, and I wanted to be a comedian, of course. And by the time I got to university and enrolled in the theater department at the University of Winnipeg, and there's a place called Prairie Theater Exchange where I did enroll in musical theater. But I kind of accidentally fell into being in a band, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. When I was 18, because it was a vehicle for my poetry, to do songwriting. It was a little funk punk band from Winnipeg. Very nurturing, great guys, very forgiving. I didn't have to be the greatest singer in the world, and that's just really how it started.
Your music over the years, I mean, has been kind of classified all over the board. I mean, you've been called rock, pop, dance, punk. You said
Hmm.
you're kind of everywhere, really. As a music fan growing up, what were you listening to? Like, what kind of music or what bands was big for you?
I think, like everyone, Generation X kids, we listened to everything. The late '80s was really remarkable. Madonna was coming out as an artist. Culture Club was very interesting. Salt and Pepper, and then of course the Clash. All these British bands. It was a tail end of punk that we were exposed to through television and the radio. And then I think the first, live show one of the first live shows I went to was Iron Maiden and Dee Snider, but also Ice-T came on tour to Winnipeg, and we went to see Ice-T in concert. And that, I mean, hip hop for us was like, Rob Bass was exploding, and Soul to Soul from the UK. It was just like, we were really lucky. Our generation was discovering all this music that previously, I don't think people really diversified their tastes that much. I also know for sure that because of my background with my parents, we would listen to a lot of classical Indian music. And of course, because of my interest in yoga, that just was, exacerbated through yoga class and stuff like that. It was just, I don't know. It was serendipitous the way I was introduced into being a fan of music. I liked everything.
Mhm. You mentioned Ice-T. I saw Ice-T with Body Count at the first Lollapalooza, and
Wow.
and that was like it was all these different alternative bands, and then
Yeah.
Ice-T. So
Yeah. And that's the thing, Lollapalooza was really ahead of its time, because it was so it was so interesting how it was curated. And for North America, I think that was one of the first real, variety show type of festivals that was happening. It was really neat.
what was it that drew you to want to be a musician? Was it the attitude, the lifestyle, the look, like the fun of it? What was it that made you want to? This is what I want to
I still don't.
do.
It was just really and
Not
truly,
sure.
it was everything that I could have hoped for. It was musical theater, it was theater, it was performance. That was the biggest draw for me, being able to perform every day. And again, it was a vehicle for my poetry. Being able to write lyrics and do songwriting just was a really natural fit for me. It just was something that I was embracing, but it was also very life affirming. I mean, it was perfect. It was a good fit, and it still is. I still love it.
Your debut album came out. You start to get some airplay. You get some exposure on Much Music, videos, and stuff. Some of the songs on that record, and you mentioned storytelling and stuff like that, and poetry. Some of the stuff on that record, "Tell on You," "Daddy's Getting Married," um, really brought out what would obviously become later on. Um, you telling stories and lyrically. Did you didn't think of yourself as a songwriter right away? You've mentioned that. Was it just your poets fitting into the music, your poems fitting into the music, or was it the music written around?
Honestly, a lot of it was just written on the spot with myself and a co-writer. The first record that you're talking about was written with John Dexter, who's my producer, and at the time he had Johnny Jett Records and Plum Records, and it was just him and I sitting down at the piano. And I think that going forward from there, even Ibificus, the second record, my manager was completely disillusioned with the, you know, death metal guys I was writing with. And he said, you can't, this is not, going to work out. Here, I'm going to play you some riffs. I started writing with my manager. And we wrote Spaceman, the first time we sat down to write. And then we wrote Moment of Weakness. It was just acoustic guitar and vocal. And so a lot of these songs were, kind of just imagined and dreamt up on the spot with an instrument and with just finding a counter melody with my voice.
You mentioned Ibificus. When that record came out, it kind of, I mean, everything exploded. Like that's when people really, kind of took to you, and you became a little bit more internationally, I guess, successful. Was that record? How many things in your life did that record change?
It changed so much. I was very, very lucky. At the time, we had been working with Sony 550 in New York, and they had introduced me to Glenn Rosenstein, who was the producer of that record. I'd never worked with anyone like Glenn before. And Spaceman was a song, for example, that was just acoustic guitar and vocal. It was this lilting, sad little ballad. And it was Glenn Rosenstein that turned it into what it was, and that is the gift of a producer who is a imaginative, creative, producer. They can take your song and imagine it in this other way. And it was amazing. That song, I have to say, to this day is my favorite song, always, because it still holds true. Those days when you still sit there and go, Calgon, take me away, it's the same wish, basically, to be abducted by aliens just for the evening, just to get a break, nothing weird, like maybe have a snack, that's it. But yeah, it's a song that I'm really proud of how it turned out, and it's fun. It's still fun to sing it.
My favorite record of all of yours was Super Beautiful Monster. I love
Mine
that.
too.
Is it really?
It was until the one I'm doing right now called Champion.
The Funeral for a Good Girl has always been one of my favorite songs.
Awesome.
I want to talk about because of all the songs you could have done a cover of, you chose to do the Metallica song, which for any Metallica fan I've ever met has always been very protective of Metallica.
Sure. Yes, I was very
and maybe
lucky to get permission to do it.
What made you, is just you're a Metallica fan? What was it that you said, I want that song?
Yes, I'm a huge Metallica fan, like most music fans are. And for me, definitely that song really pulled on my heartstrings the first time I heard it. And it still does, because the sincerity with which it was written. And, it just is, it's timeless. It's a timeless song that touches people. And we always mess around with that song anyway, in rehearsals and stuff like that, because it's a beautiful song to perform, and to be able to record it was a real privilege.
So everything's going well. The album's doing well. The career's doing well. You're touring. You're probably never home. You're on the road all the time, and then you get kind of that kick that you find out that you're sick. You have breast cancer. I can't even imagine what news like that would be like, but that suddenly changes everything. Like you're being told to rest and get off the road. And what's going through your mind when that happens, right at that moment of your career?
Well, I had just been married 3 weeks earlier to my second husband. I'm now on my third. Third's the best one.
Oh, good.
And so I had just been married. So for me, that was more relevant than doing shows. And I never stopped working. When I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I thought, this is great. Thank God. I thought it's over. I can rest. I had been doing probably 250 shows a year. I don't know, for like 18 years.
Yeah.
Like it just never stopped. And it was great. I loved it. I was up for the work. I never missed a show. I've canceled one show in my career. It was in 1996 in Regina because I was so sick that I literally couldn't crawl out of the van. But I've never canceled or missed a show. And breast cancer was, for me, it was the big reveal. Because they scattered. And I mean, people we work with or this type of thing. And that's cool. I never took it personally and I still don't. And I always tell patients that I do volunteering with, I always say, never take it personally. If someone is, fearful, they're going to have a fear-based response. If they're projecting their own fears about their cancer, if it's triggering for them, whatever the case. So it was weird in that way, but we decided to keep working. And so I made a record when I was going through chemo called The Promise, because I promised to get it finished. And it's a very different record than all my other records for a variety of reasons, probably mostly because of the influence of Jason, my co-writer and producer on that record, who is just a prolific songwriter and production genius. You were talking about Funeral of a Good Girl, which was Kevin Kadish. The same thing. These guys, their brains work differently. The way they hear things is different. It's very, very interesting. And so, I'm proud of the fact that I worked through being sick, but I know in hindsight, it was because I was trying to outrun my illness. And also because my home wasn't a safe space. So I couldn't languish at home. I couldn't stay home and nap. Just because of the dynamic of the relationship that I was in at the time. So there were a lot of things, and I always say now, all the things I will do differently next time I go through cancer, which of course I hope would never happen, but if it did, boy, it's going to be way different, I always say. But yeah, it was very, very interesting. I'm happy that I had it. I'm happy that I beat it. I'm happy that it turned me into a volunteer. And I still volunteer and I still love it. I think that, eventually, if I ever change careers, that I probably never will, but if I did, I know that I always lean into healthcare advocacy because I learned so much about where the system fails patients, which is a whole other conversation. But it was amazing. It was an amazing experience. And I'm glad that I was able to have it and live through it.
And that album was, like you said, it was different sounding. It was obviously a departure from your regular stuff. A healing process, obviously.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it was really cool.
The book, which I showed.
Yeah.
That was that. It's a memoir of your career, your life, the cancer, everything. Was that something? Had you always thought, I'm going to write a book, or was that something that so much has happened to this point, I got to get it out of me?
I was badgered into writing a book by my manager of 27 years now, Peter. And he thought that it would be important for me to tell my story. And at the time, I really pushed back a lot against it because I felt too self-conscious, really. I just thought, my story is not that interesting. Everybody has a story. Anyone you can talk to on the bus, look around you on the bus. So everybody has a story. Equally as interesting and as tragic and as triumphant. I don't feel qualified to write a book, but Peter always encouraged me and pushed me to do it. And so I did it. It took a long time for me to write everything. I wrote it by hand. I didn't have word count. I still don't know how to use italics properly. So I wrote in all caps. And I have to credit my editor, Jim Gifford from HarperCollins, for going through all the drivel that I wrote, a lot of stuff that did not obviously make it into the page. Um, it has been very interesting because I feel now the book, so much has happened since the book was finished,
Mhm.
that I can't even believe it. It feels like I've lived another lifetime, for sure. The book came out in 2016.
Mhm.
So, I'm due for another
Well, I was going to say, the
pretty
book is such
soon.
a good book and it's such a good read. Have you considered doing another one?
Thank you. I wrote a book of poetry called Razor Blade Chewing Gum. It was finished 2 years ago. And so I guess that doing a dedicated book to poetry, um, for me it's very intimate. A lot of the poems are very intimate or dirty. So it hasn't found a home yet, but I haven't really sought a home for it. I think that it might be a bonus thing that we'll give to people once the record that we're working on now called Champion finally comes out. Um, I don't know yet. And I'm also working on a book that is very dedicated to cancer patients and
Oh,
their journey and stuff like that. But again, as you probably know, as a lot of people know, when you have a lot of things you're juggling, it's hard to do a lot of projects at once. Some people find it easy. It's hard for me. Writing, I have to be like by myself, sequestered somewhere, for a long period of time that I can get it done.
I never finish anything because I've got so much going on. So that's
Yes.
I need a day timer and a clock.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Champion, but first I want to talk a little bit about just to tie in with your health and all that stuff. You got involved in the CBD healing products, the Mona Lisa line. What can you talk a little bit about that? And
Oh, 100%. When I was going through breast cancer, a lot of women who I was in a clinical trial with were using CBD tinctures. So this is like 2009, for example. It was still sketchy. It was still sketchy to use marijuana. It was still against the law. And so I didn't know too much about it, but that was the first time that I had heard anything about it. And then fast forward to 2 years ago when my dear friends were founding a CBD company. My husband was having a lot of trouble sleeping. He has tinnitus, among other demons. I always tease him about because he eats too much hot curry, but that's another story. So that's why I say he can't sleep. But so he was using the CBD to help him with sleeping. And he takes nothing. This kid's never had a cigarette in his life, has never smoked marijuana, was very skeptical, and didn't want to take sleeping aids or anything like that. But the CBD for him was life changing. It gave him the ability to go to sleep and to be free from anxiety in the day. And I find for me, I started taking it for my workouts. My workouts were always very intense, but as I get older, it's hard on my body. And I found that the CBD actually, I was like, well, maybe it'll, be good for my just everything, my circulation, my joints, all the different things that it is notorious for helping with. And I suddenly am doing 200 lunges and walking lunges in the gym. I've never in my lifetime been able to do any such thing. So I was absolutely shocked by that and was so encouraged that I wanted to be a part of it. And so, my working with Mona Lisa really was because I was a believer. And the fact that they are, cruelty free, the fact that it is vegan, all of those things for me were more important than anything else. And it's, ingredients that I trust, that I know what it is. The CBD world, probably like the marijuana world, I'm not sure, or the cannabis world, if you will. It's like the Wild West out there, and you can order anything on the internet, and there's no regulatory body that will tell you for sure what it has in it. But the same thing goes for protein powders.
Yeah.
and vitamins, you're guessing. The problems that I have now, particularly in Canada, because with Health Canada, particularly, is they were supposed to look at CBD, um, and like separate it from the Cannabis Act. Those of us who like to champion CBD for health, we believe it's a health product, a wellness product, a food supplement. We don't really think it's the same, but so hopefully, eventually legislation will change and work in the favor of people who want to get well. So we'll see how it goes.
I think it will. I really do. Do you, is that stuff available? Like, is that line available online? Is it in stores? Is it?
Yeah, you can go. I mean, I'm always going to tell you to go to MonaLisaHealing.com. I think that it will be good for anything that you want to use it for. I use it on my face. I use it for my hands that are always chapped. I use it for everything. There are people who use CBD oil as lubricant, as moisturizer, as a food supplement. They put it in their pet's food. My little 10-month-old puppy gets CBD. I don't know. I always recommend to anybody, talk to your healthcare provider, because it may not be for you. But I know with Mona Lisa, I know what I'm getting into. I know what I'm getting. It's THC free, and it's really important for people to explore it first. But if they want to know more about Mona Lisa, go to MonaLisaHealing.com.
Awesome. Let's talk about the album. It's been put off and put off. This was an album that was supposed to come out last year.
Yeah.
And was it COVID that you said, I don't want to put it out yet until the pandemic's kind of not gone, because it's never going to be gone, but was it you decided to wait because of the pandemic, or was there other reasons that you said, let's hold off on this and do it when we're ready to do it?
Well, initially it was like I always knew what my first 3 songs would be. And again, we're of the generation that we bought albums and listened to the whole album from the beginning to the end, because the order of songs was probably deliberate from the artist, or all these things. And so I always felt like I wanted to just release the first single, the second single, and the third single, and then release the record. And so we kind of planned it out for 2020 in that fashion. And then, yes, the first single we had put out, called Jim, on Valentine's Day last year. It was very deliberate that was the song that was first, because it was it was very dramatic. It's a very dramatic song. It's not a ballad.
It's a
rocker. Yeah, it's a very dramatic song. And it was important to me to get the sound across. The second single we knew would be Broke Into Your Car. And we were going to release that last May. But by the time we were getting into May, yes, the pandemic was starting to accelerate, if you will. Things were starting to really get scary in the world. And then, of course, we put it off about a month. And then, by the time we get into June and stuff, there is an absolute social uprising. There's an absolute racial reckoning that is happening. And it's important, and it was important. And, in order for someone like me or you or any of us to really show up and be present for it, I just thought, I don't feel authentic. I don't feel like, putting my record out. I feel like that should be second to what's happening in the world. This stuff is more important. This is time for a revolution. I want to be there to amplify voices that need amplification, not my stupid record. Like, that's literally how I thought. I thought, this is it. My record is insipid compared to what's important in the world. It's not important. And as time went on, as the summer went on, it still, I kept it in the background. And I thought, I can't see me feeling like it is relevant for me as an artist, but also as a wanting to be an ally, wanting to be somebody who, is out there trying to lend my voice to causes that I believe in. And so the record, it didn't get shelved, but it got put on the back burner. As a result, we started tinkering with it because my guitar player husband Snake and my guitar player Doug Fury, who's producing, they're tinkerers.
Yeah.
So in many ways, it was a blessing because now we have, revamped one of our songs that was it was like this sweet little ska song, and now it sounds like, Mastodon. In comparison, it's like insane what they're doing. They're just, and I feel like, well, shit, we're just gonna tinker with this thing forever now. But we finally put out the second single again on Valentine's Day, called
Okay.
"Broke Into Your Car," and with the third single that it's still in the same order. I don't know when that's going to be out, but hopefully we'll be able to put it out with a video. And then at that time, I'm hoping to put the record out. I just don't know when that'll be. When it feels right, that's when it'll come out.
What's the third single?
Well, I'll just tell you this. It's about falling in love and roller skating.
Two things I've not done well in my life, really.
Same here.
Well, I can't wait to hear the rest of it because those first two songs are fantastic. And
Thank you.
I mentioned the video for Jim. That was a great video. You've always been known.
Thank you.
You've always been known.
That was also Doug. Doug also did the direction on that, so very proud of him.
Good. You've always been a very unique artist. There's never really been another Bif Naked. There's never really been anyone that looks like you, sounds like you. Did the music media ever try to compare you to anyone else?
Well, I think that a lot of girls probably have that history, especially in the 90s. We were all called angry white females. And as much as that irritated me when I was in my early 20s, again, I always knew it wasn't personal, and that was, people have to make those comparisons because it helps them better understand it, and that's all there is to it. They can go, oh, okay, and at the same time, what are the other things that are coming out at the same time that they're familiar with that they're going to compare you to, whether it's Gwen Stefani's band or whether it was like Alanis Morissette or whatever the case. And I don't know. I always thought, well, that's cool. Those singers are really famous. If they want to compare me to these famous broads, I have no problem with that. I always felt like when they come to the show, that's when they'll see the difference. And it was something that I worked very, very hard to try and be unique and different for the performances. I always wanted to be as tough as the guys that I looked up to, who were performers, and I wanted to have equal footing with my male counterparts, and that's something that I always worked towards. And that was that was a personal goal. It wasn't even anything that I think I shared at the time. It was just really important to me to be as tough as all the guys were, because I personally didn't feel any of these other females that I was being compared to were tough. I didn't feel like they could hold their own in a mosh pit or a fight or any of those things. And it's not like I was promoting that or slamming anyone, but it was something that I was working towards as a personal best. And I'm still the same way, and I think that a lot of athletes are probably like that, where they just compete against themselves and try and be better every year. And that's kind of how I always looked at my shows. For me, it was about the performances more than anything else.
Well, and you can tell that because live, I've seen you live a few times, and it's an amazing experience because you kind of pour everything into it. Vocally, your performing and the way that you sing is and a lot of the songs are very demanding vocally. As you've matured and gotten a little older, have you had to do anything different with your voice? Do you prepare differently? Do you sing any differently as you've gotten older? Or is it just, I get on stage and I belt it out? screw the voice?
I just had to learn, like when I was in Gorilla, as a young performer and just learning, it took me a long time. And even in Chrome Dog, which was my second band, I lost my voice all the time, all the time. And I think it might have been because I still drank alcohol. And it's not the alcohol that made me lose my voice. It was all the loud laughing. Honestly, that's it. So for me, I knew that alcohol meant I wouldn't be able to do my job, period. There was no half-ass way to do it, because I just talk too much. I just talk too much if I have a teaspoon of beer. So that was it. I just decided I can either try and be a professional and be my best, or I can have a beer. There was no medium. So me becoming or trying to have a straight edge lifestyle was really about me always wanting to be absolutely clear and be a professional, but also in my personal life, not make any bad judgment, not have my I guess my psyche impaired in any way, not for a second. And I think it served me very well because I learned how to sing with not getting very many breaks. We never had the luxury that these big bands that fly on jets have. They can have 2 days off in between shows. I've had to play back-to-back shows since I was 17. And that's just, and all bands, that started out in the van, that's what they learned how to do. And so you have to learn to preserve your voice. And that means, barely any talking, or, not drinking orange juice, not drinking milk, not, all these things that you can do to help yourself. And now as I get older, my voice is lower. The resonation of my vocal cords, it stretches, it's lower every year, which I think is very funny.
But a lot of bands have to do that. They have to lower the song, right? As the
Yes,
singer gets older.
absolutely. Sure. I always highly recommend transposing hard songs. But over time you develop a real habit. I can have laryngitis all day, but for some reason at 9:35 when I need to be belting out tango shoes, it just comes from somewhere. I don't know where, but it's muscle memory. It's really interesting how the body works, but being a vocalist is not easy.
I can imagine. Well, see, now I can blame the reason I can't sing is because I drank a lot of milk. Thank you so much. So the album will finally come out, we hope, after the third single. Are you going to hit the road when you can? Like, is it going to be a more, like, not necessarily stadium shows, but is it going to be more on stage with a full band going nuts? Or are you going to do any kind of, are you going to do a little bit more of the book tour type thing, the songs and stories and that? Which I hope you do, because I want my books.
All of them. I like it both. I like doing the songs and stories tour a lot. I love doing that. And it's fun for us, and I love performing the songs in that way. Obviously we would love to be doing the rock tours. I don't know when we will ever be in a situation where we can have mosh pits again. I really can't imagine that it'll ever happen. I don't know, but all I can do is pray and hope that it happens for all the bands, not just me, for everybody, and for the fans. There is nothing finer than a night going home drenched in sweat and being hoarse from singing with your favorite band, as a fan. And I hope that we can all get back there.
And I hope you do more of the book tour type stuff, because I want my book signed, and I never.
Very good.
And I never made it to the shows right before things stopped, and I wanted to get out there. So it's fitting that this past Monday was International Women's Day, because I got to sit with you today, one of Canada's most talented women.
Thank you.
I appreciate you being with us. I'm glad you took the time. I hope you and your family stay safe, and thank you so much for joining us
Thank you.
today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This has been a real treat.
Thanks, Biff.